I do quite a lot on Twitter, and the other day somebody sent me a tweet about an article in the Plymouth Herald, which I passed on to our reporter Dan Whitworth, who's here. And Dan, you smelt a story.
Yes, I mean, it was a good spot by you, Paul, and obviously the Plymouth Herald, it's one of those really good examples of strong local journalism that's still going on around the UK. I got in touch with the reporter behind that story, Miles O'Leary, and he in turn put me in touch with a lady called Denise Sullivan. Now, she's got an interesting story about freeholds and leaseholds. Now, Denise is 71. She bought a new house. Now, crucially, she bought it freehold. We'll come to more on that in a minute, but very important point.
So that means it's her house. She can do what she likes.
We'll come to that in a minute. Now, she bought this in Pembroke, so South West Wales, for about £125,000 in 2016. Now, despite using a lawyer to help her with the purchase, which, of course, most people need to do, only now is Denise discovering some of the legal particulars. And one of the legal particulars that she's a bit concerned about is her freehold has more than a dozen covenants on it.
What covenants?
Covenants are essentially a sort of an agreement that's binding or enforceable in a court of law, basically about what she can and cannot do to her property. That's despite it being freehold.
Right, so there are restrictions on even a freehold, and this is freehold, not leasehold. We stress that. What sort of things are we talking about?
Well, I've got a list. I've got a copy of the contract.
A very long list there, by the looks of it.
A very long list. I mean, going down, it's near enough 2 dozen. I'll read you just a couple of them. So, Denise mustn't erect or construct any building or structure whatsoever, whether temporary or permanent, on the property without prior consent in writing of developer, for which there will be a fee payable. You'll like this one, Paul, with your green fingers. Don't cut down, damage, neglect or remove any existing tree or hedge. Here's another one. Trouble if you're a tradesperson here. Not to park any commercial vehicle, caravan, mobile home, camper van or boat on the property.
So even a caravan?
Even a caravan, not allowed, according to these restrictive covenants. And then just the last one here. Not to erect or place on the property a satellite dish or an aerial until the estate is finished and all the houses are sold.
So no TV till all the houses are done?
Well, no TV. And of course, all of this has got Denise seriously worried.
I'm not very keen on landlords. I don't trust landlords and leaseholds. I promised myself I would never get involved with a leasehold property. And now finding out that my freehold is not worth the paper it's written on makes me so angry, because if these covenants, I mean, if they're that straightforward and innocent and not set there to trap me, why are they not made clear? Why doesn't your solicitor tell you about them? Why doesn't the developer explain exactly what they're trying to do with these? And this is a bomb that's just waiting to go off. And if you fall into the trap, you're stuffed.
And Dan, is Denise worried about other things? Because there are other things that she's concerned about.
Yes, very much so. There's something called an estate rent charge on a freehold. That's a bit like what a service charge is on a leasehold. At the moment, the rent charge for Denise, that's £197 per year. Now, that's for things like maintaining roads and green spaces, because the council's not going to adopt them, so it doesn't have to look after them. There's no regulation and no cap on what that estate rent charge can rise to, though. And also, something else Denise is worried about, there's a legal technicality, which means if she ever gets into arrears on that rent charge, her developer can effectively evict her.
It would seem that they've created this sort of leasehold look so that they obviously intend to create a lease given the first opportunity, which I do find very disturbing. The third thing really is the fact that all of this is unregulated and uncapped, and that creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of worry.
Now, Dan, the developer is Persimmon, a big builder. What did they have to say about Denise's concern?
Well, Persimmon said, quote, residents will have the right to self-manage or appoint an agent of their own choosing to carry out maintenance on behalf of residents. And it added, finally, purchasers and their solicitors are provided with all details material to the property during the purchasing process.
Thanks very much, Dan. Well, with me in the studio is Andrew Melville. He's a property lawyer for the Baker Skelly law firm. Andrew Melville, that estate rent charge, why do developers impose this? You expect it with leasehold, but not with freehold.
No, it's a very an archaic mechanism, the rent charge. It's a created out of very antiquated property statutes. The problem generally with freehold land is making the burden of positive covenants, obligations to pay money, binding on owners and their successors in titles to plots. So there is this mechanism, the estate rent charge, which allows for various sums of money to be paid, fluctuating on an annual basis, for the provision of services shared across the estate from all owners.
So this is like mowing the grass, and where it's not adopted by the local authority,
Correct.
the roads, the street lighting, that kind of thing. So in a way it's fair that all the residents should pay that if the local authority hasn't adopted it. But she's worried that it's uncapped and it could be raised at any time, and if she doesn't pay, she could be evicted.
Indeed. There is concerns in this area that have been acknowledged by the government, and in their response to recent consultation at the back end of 2018, the Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government said that they were looking to legislate to introduce the same protection that's available for leasehold owners in respect of their service charge, so consultation, reasonableness criteria and recourse to tribunals, to be effective for freeholders who are paying state rent charges.
Yes, but that of course has caused a lot of concern among leaseholders, that those processes are slow, expensive, and you're up against a massive company. It's hard for residents to fight. But stay with us, but listening in Worcester to all that is Beth Rudolph. She's the director of the Conveyancing Association. Beth Rudolph, are you seeing a growth in these rent charges?
Hi, Paul. Yes, we are. Our members are reporting to us a growth in this area, and we kind of expected it, because where the government has announced that they're banning leasehold houses because of all the abuse, it's a bit like whack-a-mole. Every time you think you've sorted out one area, another pops up.
So you, sorry to interrupt, but you think builders are deliberately looking to this to replace at least some of the revenue they would have got from freehold homes?
When you look at the construction of some of these rent charges, that's exactly what's happening. One of our members sent one from another major developer who has already had their wrists slapped over the leasehold scandal. And that one not only imposed rent charges, as we've seen on this one, but also an escalating rent charge, so that it was increasing by RPI every year, and then every sixth year it would increase by an additional 20 quid. So no relationship to the actual cost of maintenance. So that feels to me, and I suspect it does to you, Paul, with all the emails you get about this, very similar to those escalating leasehold rent charges.
Well, it does rather, and I must say, you say all the emails, we've been getting them all morning since I trailed this item on BBC Breakfast this morning. And are the fears about it rising? I mean, it doesn't have to rise, does it? But we've certainly got a lot of emails saying to us, well, mine's risen, mine's gone up, a couple of times. And certainly Denise believes she knows of an estate where it's trebled in a very short time.
It's very much likely to go up in the years after the development is finished, because, of course, when the initial budget is produced, that's when everything is brand spanking new, and there isn't an awful lot of maintenance. So what people should be doing when they go to view these properties is asking for a material facts disclosure under the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading regulations that should tell them about any of the things that might put off the average consumer, and also ask for a budget, not just the budget for this year, but for 3 years' time. There should be also an asset management plan in place, which should indicate over 5 years, actually, how much would be expected to be paid.
Let's go to talk about covenants too, because that concerns Denise a lot, the covenants. I mean, I believe they are fairly normal, but they can be enforced, and similar fears are being expressed about the cost of when they're enforced.
Well, first things first, I don't want Denise thinking that she can't have an aerial or satellite TV on her property. The actual clause here says that she can't have it on the front elevation. And the reason for that is to try and maintain the look and feel of the estate. And that's very much what the rest of the covenants are about, apart from, as you say, that extension one where that she's going to have to get permission, because there's no reasonableness required for the fee in that regard.
You've got literally 10 seconds, Beth. I'm sorry, to tell us, how do you get good legal advice on these things right at the start?
Right. So when you go along to a developer, if you're told that you can only use their conveyancer, that is a red warning sign right there. Sirens going off.
So get an independent legal advice from someone not connected to the builder. We have to stop there, Beth Rudolph. Thanks very much. And also thanks to Andrew Melville.